Take the dress off slowly, sweetheart. Stolen property goes back to the store. Officer, this is my wedding. Sit down, sir, or you'll honeymoon in a cell. That deal was her grandmother's. He ripped it off her head. Evidence. The little crown comes off too. Now you match the booking photo. She paid for that dress. I have the receipt right here. Phone evidence isn't evidence. Hands behind your back, girl. Now I'll go quietly. One thing first. You don't get requests, sweetheart. Run my name. Spell it right. Dispatch, run a name. Female, black, mid-30s. Serena Brooks. Unit 12. Stand by. What dispatch said next silenced every cop on that channel. But first, the morning it all began. Have you ever been accused of stealing the life you built yourself? The morning broke soft and golden over Willow Creek Vineyard, an hour west of Richmond, Virginia. Mist hung low between the vines. October light made the hills look brushed in copper. The air smelled of cut grass and crushed grapes, sweet and sharp at once. White chairs stood in patient lines on the lawn. A string quartet tuned beneath an arch of cream roses, and somewhere behind the farmhouse, a caterer shouted about ice. Inside the bridal suite, Serena Brooks stood very still while her sister pinned the veil, calm eyes, hands that never fidgeted. The veil was lace, soft as breath, passed down from a grandmother who had cleaned hotel rooms for 40 years so her family could climb. Serena touched the hem once, then let it go. If you ask the guests what the bride did for a living, most would shrug. Something with the city. They'd say government work. Serena never corrected them. She had spent 15 years learning that silence gathers more truth than questions do. Even Adrian's mother, who pried at everything, had gotten nothing but a warm smile and a change of subject. Adrian Brooks had proposed on a rainy Tuesday outside the diner where they'd met. He was an architect, patient and exact, the kind of man who measured twice for everything except falling in love, that he liked to say he'd done in one look. Serena had laughed and said she'd needed 3. She didn't tell him she'd also checked the exits first. Adrian knew what she did. You don't marry a stranger. But they had agreed this weekend belonged to the cake and the dance floor, not to her work. One day, she had said, "Where I'm just Serena," he had promised. Old habits lived in her like a second skeleton. At restaurants, she always took the chair facing the door. She read rooms the way other people read menus. That morning, Layla held up a folded napkin from the head table and grinned. Who folds napkins like they're standing for inspection? Serena smiled and said nothing. Layla fixed the last pin and stepped back. Grandma would lose her mind today, she whispered. For a second, the calm cracked and Serena's eyes went glassy. Then she breathed in the way she always did. 4 counts in, 4 counts out, and the stillness returned. Their grandmother's photo sat on the gift table in a silver frame. Outside, the quartet found its tune. In the town of Maple Grove, a bridal boutique had a problem. A sample gown, designer beaded and worth more than a used car, had vanished from a fitting room the week before. The local paper ran 2 paragraphs about it. The owner filed a report and pinned a grainy photo by the register. No suspects, no leads, just a missing dress and an open file sitting in the county system like a loaded spring. That same week, inside the Maple Grove Police Department, Sergeant Harlan Reeves had read an internal memo twice, then a third time. New leadership incoming, it said. Internal Affairs Bureau restructured. A new commander sworn in with a mandate to reopen old complaints. Harlan had stood by the coffee machine with the memo in his hand, and a patrolman later remembered one strange detail. The sergeant's face had gone the color of wet ash. By then, the lawn at Willow Creek had filled. Guests in hats and linen suits, perfume and laughter. Folding chairs creaked. Children chased each other between the vine rows. Somebody's uncle was already crying. The quartet played something tender. Adrian stood at the arch, rocking on his heels, grinning at everyone and no one. Reverend Elias Grant opened his worn Bible and found the page he'd marked. Then the music turned and Serena came down the aisle on her own 2 feet. No one gave her away. She had told Layla why she'd given herself to this life, one careful choice at a time. Guests stood, phones rose. Adrian's chin trembled. The morning held its breath, golden and perfect. And a call landed at County Dispatch. The voice was muffled, flattened, strangely rehearsed. It reported a disturbance at Willow Creek Vineyard. A woman in a stolen designer gown. The caller used one phrase most civilians never use. Then the line went dead. And somewhere on the route, a patrol car swung around with its lights off. At County Dispatch, Carla Simmons took the call. She had worked the board for years, and she graded voices the way teachers grade essays. This one bothered her. Male, muffled, flat, not panicked, not annoyed, rehearsed. It described a black woman in a stolen designer gown causing a disturbance at Willow Creek Vineyard. It used a piece of language that snagged in Carla's ear like a thorn. Then it hung up before she could ask a single question. Procedure said log it, broadcast it, move on. She logged it, she broadcast it. But she also typed 4 words into the call notes that would matter very much later. Caller declined to identify. Officer Derek Harlan heard the broadcast and turned the cruiser around before dispatch finished talking. "That's not our zone," Officer Ryan Caldwell said from the passenger seat. He was fresh out of the academy, still polishing his boots every night. "Unit 8's closer. Unit 8 drives like my grandmother." Harlan accelerated. "Stolen gown, fancy vineyard. You know what that is? That's a felony with witnesses. That's a clean collar." Caldwell looked at the screen. "Shouldn't we call the boutique first? Confirm the gown's even theirs?" "Confirm." Harlan said the word like it tasted bad. "You develop an instinct. Some people belong at a place like Willow Creek." He checked his mirror and smiled. "And some people are shopping for a story." Caldwell said nothing. He'd been riding with Harlan for weeks, long enough to learn that silence was the cheapest seat in the car. But his stomach had started doing the thing it did before bad calls. There were stories about Harlan around the department, traded quietly. Complaints in his file. Words like discourteous and improper stopped living in files nobody opened. Everyone had been reviewed and signed off by the same supervising sergeant. Everyone had evaporated. Harlan called them love letters from sore losers. He'd never once been disciplined, and he drove like a man who knew he never would be. The cruiser came up the route with its lights off. Harlan liked arriving quiet. He said loud arrivals gave people time to perform. The truth was simpler. He liked the moment a scene noticed him, the ripple, the way conversations died in his direction. At the gate, a vineyard coordinator with a clipboard tried to wave him toward guest parking. Harlan rolled past her. She would testify later that she told him twice. Private event, a wedding. He'd answered, "I know exactly what it is." At the arch, Reverend Grant had just reached the vows. Adrian went first, voice cracking on the second sentence. Guests laughed and cried at once, the way good weddings make people do. Serena took his hands. The October light came through the rose arch and turned her grandmother's lace into a soft halo. She opened her mouth to speak. That was when the doors of the scene swung open. Not doors exactly, but that's how guests described it later. A presence cut up the aisle like a draft of cold air, boots on grass, a duty belt creaking, a radio murmuring on a hip. "Sorry, folks, this isn't part of the program." The quartet faltered and stopped. Harlan walked the length of the aisle the way men walk into rooms they're sure they own. Caldwell trailed 3 steps back, eyes down. "Ma'am, step away from the gentleman. We've got a report of a stolen gown matching this description. Designer make, beadwork." He gestured at her like an appraiser. "Look at this. Tag's still on. People like you don't come through the front door of that store." A sound moved through the guests, half gasp, half growl. Adrian stepped forward. "Officer, this is my wedding. Sit down, sir, or you'll honeymoon in a cell." Serena did not move. Later, dozens of guests would describe the same thing. The bride going perfectly still, her chin level, her breathing slow. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. "Officer," she said evenly, "what's your name and badge number?" I asked the questions. "ID. Now my wallet is in the bridal suite. I'll walk there with you and hand it to you myself." "So, you're refusing to identify?" Harlan pulled out his citation pad like a man dealing cards. "Refusing to comply. We're in resisting territory now, sweetheart." "No one is resisting anything," she said. "You're escalating a wedding." Adrian had his phone out, hands shaking, scrolling. Here the receipt. Evergreen Bridal paid in full months ago. There's the gown. There's the order number." Harlan didn't lower his eyes to the screen. Not once. "Phone evidence isn't evidence. Anyone can type up a receipt, then call the boutique." Layla's voice tore across the lawn. She was coming down the aisle with her bouquet still in her fist. "It's open. Call them. Ma'am, back up. That's my sister. Back up. Caldwell shifted his weight. Derek, maybe we should check the receipt first. Phone evidence isn't evidence, rookie. Harlan didn't even turn his head. Watch the crowd. Phones were up everywhere now. 100 small black rectangles, all recording. Reverend Grant closed his Bible, came down from the arch, and placed his body gently and deliberately between Harlan and the bride. Son, Grant said, I've baptized half this county. I know this woman. Whatever you think is happening here, it isn't. Reverend, move, or you're next. I've been arrested before, Grant said softly. Birmingham, 1963. I was 9 years old. Then you know how it goes. Move. Someone in the third row shouted about a lawyer. Someone else was crying. A child asked very clearly in the silence why the policeman was being mean to the princess. Harlan reached past the reverend and took hold of the veil. What happened next exists on dozens of recordings from dozens of angles, and every single one is hard to watch. He ripped it off her head. Pins tore loose. A strip of antique lace sewn by a hotel maid decades earlier, worn by 3 brides since, fluttered to the grass like a shot bird. Guests screamed. Layla lunged and was caught by 2 cousins. That veil was her grandmother's. He ripped it off her head. Evidence. Harlan tossed it to Caldwell, who held it the way you'd hold something still alive. The little crown comes off too. Now you match the booking photo. He spun Serena by the arm. The seam at her shoulder gave with a sound like a struck match. Satin fitted over months tore to the blade of her shoulder. The cuffs clicked once, twice, too tight, deliberately tight. The quartet's oldest member, a 60-year-old man, stood up and turned his chair to face away. He said afterward it was the only protest he could think of. The lawn had gone wrong in the way places do after accidents. Spilled programs in the grass. A flower girl face down in her mother's lap, refusing to look. The cake, 3 tears waiting under glass. Suddenly, something from another kinder timeline. Adrian's own groomsmen held him back. All of them knew. The way every guest suddenly sickly knew that one wrong step from him meant 2 arrests instead of 1. He looked at his bride, cuffed under the rose arch, lace halo gone, shoulder bare to the cold, and his bride looked calm. That was the detail no one could explain that day. No tears, no shaking. Serena Brooks stood in the ruin of her own wedding, like a woman reading a report she had already finished writing. I'll go quietly, she said. One thing first. You don't get requests, sweetheart. She turned her head just enough to find Harlan's eyes. Guests in the front row said her voice dropped into a register they had never heard from her. Quiet, procedural, almost gentle. Run my name, spell it right. Caldwell would remember that sentence for the rest of his career. Not the words, the tone. People asking favors don't sound like that. People giving last chances do. Harlan laughed, a short, ugly bark, the last carefree sound he would make for a very long time. The back seat of a patrol car is designed to make you small. Hard plastic, no door handles, a cage of steel mesh between you and the world. Serena sat with her hands pinned behind her, torn satin pooling around her like spilled milk. Through the window, she watched her wedding die. Caterers stood frozen with trays. The arch of cream roses leaned where someone had bumped it. Her grandmother's veil lay across Caldwell's passenger seat in an evidence bag, folded like a dead language. She catalogued all of it, calmly, professionally. Witnesses, dozens, recordings, multiple angles. No Miranda, no stated charge. Cuffs double-locked? No, she'd felt them tighten when she shifted. A violation. She filed it away. Caldwell appeared at the window, hovering. Ma'am, those cuffs. If they're too tight, I can loosen them. Harlan called from the hood of the cruiser, where he'd spread his paperwork like a man at a picnic. Tight cuffs improve memory. She'll remember where she got the dress. I remember everything, Serena said quietly. Nobody understood the sentence yet. Harlan was writing. He wrote slowly with the tip of his tongue at the corner of his mouth, choosing words the way some men choose fishing lures. Subject became agitated. Subject refused lawful commands. Subject physically resisted detention. Caldwell read the lines upside down and felt his stomach drop again. He had been there. He had seen a woman stand still in a garden. She didn't resist, Caldwell said. Quiet. Careful. Report's not about what happened, rookie. Harlan didn't look up. It's about what holds up. Then Harlan glanced at the small camera on his own chest. Battery's been acting up, he said, and pressed the power stud until the light went dark. Caldwell would testify to that moment under oath later. Caldwell's own camera stayed on. Harlan never thought to check it. Nobody had called Evergreen Bridal. The boutique sat miles away, open, phone silent. The owner was steaming a sample gown by the register under the grainy photo of the real thief. A photo that showed to anyone who looked a white woman in her 20s. Verification would have taken moments. It was the most expensive phone call never made. On the lawn, the wedding was becoming something else. A scene. Guests clustered in rings, hugging, replaying their videos with shaking hands. The footage was already moving, cousin to cousin, group chat to group chat, phone to phone across states. An aunt watched it twice and called her son, who clerked for a federal judge. A college roommate watched it once and started typing names of news stations. No one had posted it publicly yet. It was worse than that. It was spreading through thousands of living rooms with the caption, "This is Serena. This is her wedding." Adrian stood at the fence line with his collar open and his boutonniere crushed, phone to his ear, talking to a law school friend. His voice was doing something between rage and arithmetic. No charge stated. Yes, dozens of videos at least. No, she's calm. He glanced at the cruiser and his voice cracked. She's sitting in there in her wedding dress, man. Layla was not crying anymore. Layla was dialing. She stood apart from everyone by the gift table, her grandmother's photo in the silver frame, watching her. The number she dialed wasn't saved under a name. It was saved under 3 letters Serena had made her memorize. The instructions had come with no explanation. If something ever happens to me and it involves a badge, call this number, say my full name, then do whatever the voice says. Layla pressed call. Somewhere in Richmond, a phone lit up on a desk that very few people in the state had the clearance to sit behind. "This is Layla Brooks," she said. "My sister is Serena Brooks. Serena. It's happening." Back at the cruiser, Harlan finished his masterpiece of a report and stretched. The morning had turned out fine in his estimation. Clean collar, fancy venue, a story for the locker room. He keyed the radio with one thumb, casual like ordering lunch. "Dispatch, Unit 12. Got a female in custody at Willow Creek. That gown call. Run a name for me. Female, black, mid-30s. Serena Brooks." In the dispatch center, Carla Simmons typed the name into the system. The return came up quickly. She read it again. Her coffee stopped halfway to her mouth, and a dispatcher 2 chairs down heard her whisper 2 words to herself. "Oh no, Unit 12, she said, keying her mic slowly. "The way you approach a downed power line. Stand by." The channel stayed empty after Carla said stand by. Units listening to the gown call heard that silence and sat up straighter, because dispatchers don't hesitate. Hesitation means the system just showed them something the street doesn't know yet. In the dispatch center, Carla Simmons stared at her screen and made a decision that wasn't hers to make. There was a protocol for this. There was also a man at a vineyard with a person in custody. She keyed her mic and chose every word like a step on ice. "Unit 12, be advised, the name returns clear. No warrants, no record." Units across the county would swear they heard paper rustle near the mic. "Unit 12, that name returns to Deputy Chief Serena Brooks, Commander of the Internal Affairs Bureau. She is your chain of command. Confirm. Copy." Silence has flavors. There's the silence of an empty room, the silence after thunder, and then there's the silence that fell over that frequency county-wide. Patrol cars rolling to soft stops on shoulders. A sergeant in a parking lot setting down his sandwich. Harlan stood with the radio halfway to his mouth and did not move. The color left his face in stages like a tide going out. He looked at the radio as if it were an object that had appeared in his hand by magic and started saying impossible words. Caldwell took half a step backward. Pure animal instinct. The urge to be outside a blast radius. The wind moved through the vines. A guest's phone, still recording, caught the only sound on that lawn. Dozens of people breathing. "Unit 12, confirm. Copy. Carla again. Steele in it now." Harlan's thumb pressed the key. It took him 2 tries. "Copy." Then the channel did something veteran dispatchers say almost never happens. It stayed silent. No unit broke in with traffic. Nobody requested a status. An entire county's worth of police radio simply held its breath because every officer listening was running the same math. Wedding gown call. No verification. The new head of internal affairs in handcuffs. The math came out the same in every car. Here is what the county knew about Serena Brooks and what Harlan was learning in the worst way available. 15 years of service. She'd started on patrol in Baltimore. Nights, footposts, the sectors nobody requested. Made detective in 5. Then, a decade in internal investigations. The unit cops fear more than gunfire. The place where careers go to be x-rayed. Hundreds of misconduct cases, a conviction list that included a deputy commander and an entire evidence room crew. A commendation from the governor of Maryland sat in a box, still wrapped because she found framed praise embarrassing. And in the spring, the city of Maple Grove had come asking quietly. Their department had a problem. A pattern of complaints that kept evaporating. A culture nobody inside could crack open. They needed an outsider with a steel stomach. Someone complaint-proof. The city manager's exact words in a closed session. We need the cleanest pair of hands in 3 states. She'd been sworn in recently. Small ceremony, no press. Her first day at headquarters was scheduled for the Monday after her honeymoon. The chair facing the door, the napkins folded for inspection. Something with the city. Every small oddity her guests had giggled at for years had been the visible edge of a 15-year iceberg. At the cruiser, Harlan opened the rear door. His hands had suddenly remembered how to be gentle. "Ma'am, Chief, we're going to get those off you, right?" "Don't." The words stopped him like a wall. Serena turned in the seat. Cuffed, shoulder bare, torn satin and all. She looked up at him with the calm that finally made sense. "I remember everything." Caldwell heard that sentence again in his head, playing on a loop. "Officer Harlan, as of this moment, you are the subject of an active pattern of conduct review. This scene is evidence. You will not alter evidence. The cuffs stay on until they're photographed." "Chief, I didn't," she said. "That's the job. Today, you'll learn how it's done." Chief Harlan Brooks arrived minutes later. Personal vehicle, golf shirt, face the gray of old concrete. He'd gotten 2 calls in quick succession. One from dispatch, one from a Richmond number that outranked his caller ID. He crossed the lawn at a half-run, took in the leaning arch, the crying guests, the bride in the back seat, and aged a year per step. "Get those cuffs off her," he barked. "Now?" "No," Serena's voice. "Even not yet." Deputy Chief Brooks. She nodded toward the wedding photographer, a stunned man about to take the most consequential pictures of his career. "That gentleman is going to photograph these cuffs, my wrists, this dress, and that officer's citation pad. Then your department can have its cuffs back." And so the strangest crime scene documentation in county history happened under a rose arch. A wedding photographer, hands shaking, shot close-ups of a deputy chief in a torn gown. Dozens of witnesses watched. The head of internal affairs ran her own arrest like a case file. When the cuffs finally clicked open, the marks on her wrists got their own photo series. She rubbed them once, stood, and straightened what remained of the dress. Harlan stood at the edge of it all in the smoking ruin of his own making. His report, subject physically resisted detention, sat on the hood of the cruiser, already curling in the breeze. He was beginning to understand the shape of the next year of his life. But Serena was looking past him. "One question," she said, to no one in particular. Her eyes had gone somewhere else, back up the timeline, the way investigators travel. Who called it in? Because here was the thing. Nobody on that lawn had asked yet. The boutique had never reported a black woman. The real thief in the register photo was white. Someone had aimed a phone call at this wedding like a weapon, and whoever it was had used police language to do it. The story broke nationally on Sunday night. By Monday morning, millions of people had watched a bride get handcuffed under a rose arch, and the Maple Grove Police Department's voicemail had collapsed under the weight of the country's opinion. News vans lined the curb outside headquarters like a second police fleet. Inside the building, the air itself had changed. Conversations conducted in murmurs. Doors closed softly. The smell of burnt coffee from pots nobody remembered starting. At the start of the shift, Deputy Chief Serena Brooks did the thing nobody expected. She walked into Chief Brooks's office, placed a 1-page memo on his desk, and removed herself from the case. "I'm the victim," she said. "Victims don't run their own investigations. Call Richmond. Get state police. Get someone with no friends in this building, and give them everything they ask for before they ask twice. Chief Brooks read the memo twice. You know you'd be within your rights. She was already at the door. I didn't come here to win an argument, Chief. I came here to fix a building. Watch how it looks when it's done right. Captain Laura Stanton of the Virginia State Police arrived that afternoon, with 2 investigators, a forensic audio tech, and no visible sense of humor. 22 years on the job, a reputation for being unimpressed by everything except documentation. She commandeered a conference room, taped butcher paper over the interior windows, and started building. Within a day, the room smelled of dry erase markers and cold coffee. The fluorescent lights stayed on so long that officers walking past at night could see them glowing through the paper like something incubating. Stanton's team worked the way masons work, one verified stone at a time. Stone 1, Caldwell's body cam. Unbroken minutes, every second time-stamped. The full audio of the aisle. People like you don't come through the front door of that store. The receipt offered and never looked at. And then at the cruiser, the sentence that made one of Stanton's investigators actually whistle. Report's not about what happened, rookie. It's about what holds up. Followed moments later by Harlan announcing his battery was acting up, and the log showing his own camera powered down by hand. Department policy called that a violation. Prosecutors call it consciousness of guilt. Stone 2, the guests. Dozens of videos collected through a single email address the state police set up, synchronized by a tech into one master timeline. Every angle of the veil leaving Serena's head. The audio of cuffs ratcheting twice past snug. A bride standing so still that laid side by side 3 different videos looked like photographs. Stone 3, the cruiser's own GPS. Unit 12 had been outside its assigned zone when the call dropped. Harlan had announced himself en route before dispatch finished the address. A man not responding to a call but racing other units to it. Stone 4. The report, subject became agitated. Subject physically resisted detention. Stanton's team printed those sentences and pinned them beside a still image of Serena Brooks standing motionless in a garden with her chin level. A false official report isn't a personnel matter in Virginia. It's a crime. Then there was the call itself. The audio tech stripped the distortion in one morning. A cheap pitch-shifting app. Nothing clever under it. What remained was male, middle-aged, local, calm, and the transcript held the thorn that had snagged in Carla Simmons's ear. Possible 1031 in progress. Civilians say stealing. Civilians say robbery, even when they're wrong about what that word means. Nobody says 1031 unless they've spent years keying a radio. The phone was a prepaid burner bought with cash, but burners still talk to towers. The call had pinged a single tower, covering a strip of the route, and inside that strip sat a gas station near the precinct. The pump cameras showed nothing. The driver had backed a gray pickup into the corner of the lot out of every angle he knew about. He didn't know about the car wash camera. The owner had installed it after kids kept stealing wax tokens. It caught the truck, the plate, and a man in the driver's seat with a phone to his ear. The plate came back to Sergeant Harlan Reeves. 19 years, Maple Grove PD, Supervisor of Records and Review. The same name signed at the bottom of every one of Harlan's evaporated complaints. Stanton stood in front of the corkboard for a long time that night, one thumb hooked in her belt, rearranging the pieces in her head until they made the kind of sense that ruins your sleep. Reeves had read the memo about the new Internal Affairs Commander, the outsider, the auditor, the mandate to reopen old complaints. Reopened complaints meant reopened reviews. Reopened reviews meant his signature multiple times under the word unfounded. So he'd looked her up, found the wedding announcement in the county paper, Willow Creek Vineyard, and he had built a trap out of a stolen gown report from the news, a burner phone, and a piece of bait. The bait was the genius of it and the sickness of it. Reeves never ordered anyone to do anything. He just dropped a call he knew would cross Harlan's radio. A black suspect, a luxury venue, a felony collar gleaming like a lure, and trusted years of Harlan's habits to do the rest. If it worked, the new IA boss would be booked, humiliated, maybe gone before her first Monday. A scandal instead of an audit. He had aimed one officer at one bride like a weapon, and the weapon had no idea it had been fired. The old complaints came off the shelf next. Stanton's investigators tracked down every complainant, a barber who'd been stopped multiple times, a school teacher made to sit on a curb in front of her students, A young man pulled out of his own driveway. Every complainant, black or brown. Every review closed quickly. Every signature the same. Stanton listened to those recordings. Then she wrote a single line on the butcher paper in letters big enough to read from the door. He was never stopped. He was filed. Days after the wedding, Harlan sat in the taped-over conference room with a union rep on one side and a lawyer on the other. The chair under him creaked every time he shifted, and he shifted often. His defense lasted 4 sentences. He'd responded to a dispatched call in good faith. The subject hadn't identified herself. He'd followed his training. Stanton didn't argue. Arguing wasn't her instrument. She just played things one at a time and let the room get quieter. She played the receipt being offered, and Harlan's eyes never dropping to the screen. Good faith calls the boutique. The number was on the gown's tag you photographed. She played the in-car audio from the drive. Some people belong at a place like Willow Creek, and some people are shopping for a story. The union rep shifted in his chair like the seat had warmed. She played the camera dying. She laid the report beside the synchronized timeline, physically resisted against angles of a woman standing like a statue. "Tell me which part was the training," Stanton said. Harlan's lawyer asked for a break. It didn't help. Breaks don't change footage. Officer Ryan Caldwell's days were their own kind of trial. Nobody threatened him. That was the thing he tried to explain to his sister on the phone. Nobody had to. The hallways just went quiet around him. Conversations died in doorways the way they used to die in Harlan's direction. In the parking lot one evening, he found his cruiser's mirror folded flat against the glass. Not broken, just folded. A message with deniability built in. An old instructor from the academy called him friendly as a handshake to mention how small a county can get for a cop with a reputation. Caldwell hung up. Then he sat at his kitchen table with the notebook he'd been filling since that day. Times, quotes, everything written while it was fresh, because his hands had needed something to do. He read it through once, cover to cover. Monday morning, he carried it into Stanton's conference room and put it on the table. "I should have said more than maybe we should check the receipt," he said. The words came out rough. "I thought about it every night. She got cuffed at her own wedding while I held her grandmother's veil in a bag." He stopped, jaw working. "Whatever this costs me, write it down. All of it." Stanton looked at him for a moment. "Sit down, officer," she said, and for the first time in those days, her voice had something almost warm in it. "Cost is my department now." His testimony sealed every seam in the case. The cuffs tightened on purpose. The camera killed on purpose. The report written like fiction, out loud with commentary. Serena spoke to Harlan exactly once during those weeks. It wasn't planned. A corridor outside the records office. Him being escorted one way, her walking the other. The escort suddenly very interested in a bulletin board. Harlan stopped. Up close, he looked smaller. The way men do when the thing that inflated them has been confiscated. "Chief," his voice cracked on the word. "If I had known who you were—" "I know," Serena said. "That's the confession." He blinked. "If you'd known my rank, I'd have gotten respect. My rank shouldn't have mattered. My receipt should have." She stepped past him, then paused, not turning around. "You didn't see a bride that day. You saw a story you'd already written. That's the problem I was hired to fix, and you've made the case for me better than I ever could." She walked on. Behind her, Harlan stood in the corridor for a long moment, and the escort had to say his name twice. By the end of the process, Stanton's file ran hundreds of pages. The state's attorney read it over a weekend and came back with a list of charges that made the morning news in multiple states. The disciplinary board set its hearing, and at the start of that day, 2 state police cars rolled quietly into the precinct parking lot. Not for Harlan, whose case was already made, but for the man at the records desk, who had spent years making things evaporate. Harlan Reeves was reaching for his coffee when they came through the door. The disciplinary hearing took one day. The criminal cases took months, the way real justice does, slow and procedural, and immune to applause. The board read its findings in the municipal auditorium because no room at police headquarters could hold that many cameras. Officer Derek Harlan, veteran, terminated, effective immediately, decertified by the Commonwealth, barred from carrying a badge in Virginia for life. The state's attorney followed with criminal charges, falsifying an official report, unlawful detention. Facing the synchronized timeline and his own partner's notebook, Harlan took a plea, a conviction on his record. supervised probation, community service. He left the courthouse through a side door, past the janitor who didn't look up, and discovered what it feels like when a scene doesn't notice you at all. Harlan Reeves gambled on a trial. It was a mistake. The jury heard the cleaned-up recording, saw the car wash footage, and read his signature multiple times under the word unfounded. The prosecutor's closing took minutes. He didn't break the law in spite of knowing the system. She said he broke it because he knew the system. Guilty. False report to law enforcement. Obstruction of justice. Years with time suspended. And under state law, a forfeited pension. Years of retirement. Gone with the bang of a gavel. He tried to burn down a wedding to save his paperwork. The paperwork testified against him. There was one small bitter footnote. The real gown thief, a white woman in her 20s, was caught that same month, 2 counties over, trying to return the dress for store credit. The officer who took her into custody called the boutique first. The verification took moments. Then came the part Serena had actually been hired for. The department's new directives went out under Chief Brooks's signature, but everyone knew whose hand had drafted them. Anonymous tips now required callback verification or independent corroboration before any custodial action. No exceptions, no instincts. Body cams were replaced with units that couldn't be powered down by hand. The recordings uploaded automatically beyond any officer's reach, and an audit of complaint reviews opened old cases. More officers faced discipline. Complainants got letters that began with the rarest sentence in American policing. "We were wrong, and here is what we are doing about it." The barber framed his. Weeks after the verdicts, Serena Brooks gave her first official address to the assembled department. Patrol, records, dispatch, command staff, every shift crowded into the briefing room, and nobody knew what to expect from the woman the county now called behind her back, and not unkindly, the bride. She didn't bring notes. She brought one request. "Dispatcher Simmons, stand up, please." Carla stood blindsided, coffee still in hand. On that day, Serena said, this dispatcher read a name into a radio, knowing exactly what it would detonate. She had seconds to decide between what was comfortable and what was true. Most careers never get tested that hard for that long. I've investigated police for 15 years, and I'm telling you, courage in this profession doesn't usually look like kicking in a door. It looks like a steady voice saying an inconvenient thing into a microphone. She crossed the room and shook Carla's hand. The photograph of that handshake, the deputy chief and the dispatcher, both a little glassy-eyed, ended up on the front page of the county paper and later framed on the dispatch center wall. The room stood. Some rose faster than others. That was honest, and Serena preferred honest. Respect that has to be grown is sturdier than respect that's performed. When the room emptied, Caldwell lingered by the door, last in line, still not sure he belonged in it. Serena stopped in front of him. "You kept your camera on," she said. "It was just policy, Chief." "No," she said. "Policy is what Harlan quoted. What you did was the job." That spring, a letter arrived at headquarters from Willow Creek Vineyard. The owners wished to inform the deputy chief that the Rose Arch had been rebuilt, that the day weighed on them, and that their lawn was hers. Any Saturday she chose, no charge, for as long as the vineyard stood. Because one thing remained unfinished, and the whole county knew it. The vows were still owed. On a Saturday in June, the white chairs came back to Willow Creek. Same lawn, same arch, rebuilt, the roses a little fuller. The same guests, plus a few new faces nobody would have predicted. At the gate, officers in dress uniforms stood in 2 quiet lines. Nobody had assigned them. They had asked. Ryan Caldwell stood at the end of the row, white gloves, jaw tight, holding it together until the music started. He didn't manage much past that. Carla Simmons sat in the 3rd row with a tissue ready. The quartet's oldest member came back too. Same chair, faced the right way this time, playing like a man settling a debt. Reverend Grant took his place beneath the arch and opened his worn Bible to a page that had stayed marked. He looked out at all of them and smiled. "As I was saying," he began, and the lawn laughed and cried at once. The way good weddings make people do. Serena came down the aisle on her own 2 feet, one careful choice at a time. The veil was her grandmother's, repaired by hand. The menders had offered to make the tear invisible. She'd told them to leave a thin seam of new thread where it had ripped. Some history should show. Adrian's voice cracked on the second sentence of his vows again. Some things you don't fix. And then Serena spoke, picking up where witnesses swear she'd been interrupted. She finished every sentence she was owed. When they kissed, the cheer scattered crows out of the vineyard for half a mile. That Monday, a small glass case appeared on the wall of the Internal Affairs Bureau beside the door, where every officer could see it on the way in. Inside, a pair of handcuffs and a strip of torn white satin. No plaque about victory, just a card with one line in the commander's handwriting. Run every name like it's your own. Real talk. I didn't tell you this story because of one bad cop. I told it because of how easy the system made things for him, and because everybody wants to be the hero with the badge. Most of us just get a microphone, seconds, and a choice. This story is fiction. The county, the vineyard, the names invented, but the radio silence, the folded mirror, the complaint files signed into quiet, those are stitched together from things that live in real records more often than anyone wants to count. So here's my question for you. If you had been standing in those vineyard rows, guest, rookie, dispatcher, what would you have done? Not what you hope you'd do, what you'd actually do. Tell me in the comments. I read them. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs the reminder that dignity doesn't require a title. And subscribe because next week I've got another story about the moment a quiet person stopped being